Welcome to the Research Debrief. I'm Rachel Chanko here with my co-host Luke Carlson, CEO of Discover Strength, for a podcast aimed at bridging the gap between the fitness industry and the latest science in under 20 minutes. Luke, welcome.
Rachel, great to see you.
Yes, same. All right, well, what are we going to learn about today?
Well, this is a paper that was published just a couple months ago in the Journal of Physiology. The title of the paper is Menstrual Cycle Phase Does Not Influence Muscle Protein Synthesis in Response to Resistance Exercise. So this is, I think, the biggest study on the topic over the last few years. There's this notion, and it's all over social media, it's on the podcasts, that when a female strength trains, if they strength train, if they plan their workout in the appropriate phase of the menstrual cycle, they'll produce better results or different results. So this researcher said, well, we're going to look at this. And the researcher is brilliant. Her name is Dr. Lauren Colenso-Semple. She's at McMaster University in Canada. And we've mentioned their lab before. Their lab is a phenomenal lab on all things interval training, all things protein, and all things resistance exercise. And I think she might be the most significant researcher in all things related to women's fitness right now. Now, we should mention up front that historically, for the last 30 years, there's been a bias toward exercise science research that includes men. And maybe one of the simple reasons there is they were recruiting subjects from college campuses, and it was maybe easier to recruit men. I don't know if there was a bias toward men, but there has been a dearth of research involving women. This has definitely shifted over the last couple of years. We'd love to see a paper like this because there's so many important women's fitness topics that have gone uninvestigated. This is a really important study. It flies in the face of what we're hearing and seeing on social media and from some of the pundits on podcasts. So let's dive into this paper. What they're looking at, the question they're really asking is, do we see better results when we strength train during the follicular phase versus the luteal phase of a menstrual cycle? So follicular phase is just early on in the menstrual cycle. Luteal phase is later on. And again, what we've been counseled to do, a female's been counseled to do, is you got to time that workout so that you're working out during a particular phase. Okay. So one of the strengths of this study is how they tested, first of all, what phase are we actually in? And number two, do we see some of the pathways for increases in lean muscle mass and muscle strength? So we're not going to bore our listeners with this, but from a study design standpoint, they left no stone not turned over in terms of how they measured all of this. And I'll allude to a couple of them. So let's jump right into their hypothesis. It's been hypothesized that the follicular, so this is peak estrogen early on, versus the luteal, this is peak progesterone, this is later on, phase of the menstrual cycle is more advantageous for skeletal muscle anabolism in response to resistance training, meaning the pathways are more sensitive early on versus later. Using best practice methods to assess menstrual cycle status, and those are the details we're not going to go into, they made sure that they measured what part of the menstrual cycle are we actually in. They measured two big things: muscle protein synthesis, and then that's MPS. They also measured MPB, myofibril protein breakdown. We don't need to go into detail there, but that's what they measured. They didn't measure, did your muscle get stronger or muscle get bigger? They wanted to understand physiologically, do we see the pathways activated where we're actually getting stronger and adding more muscle? And here's what they concluded. We observed that resistance exercise, so doing strength training, stimulated MPS, but there was no effect on menstrual cycle phase. So what they found out was, yes, you absolutely stimulate this muscle protein synthesis pathway when you strength train. It just doesn't matter when you do it. They conclude our data show no greater anabolic effect of resistance exercise in the follicular versus the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. Now, they are very clear to mention that you produce this increase in muscle protein synthesis regardless of when you strength train. So when you are menstruating, you should absolutely plan a strength training workout. You can strength train effectively during the menstrual cycle, but we should not tell a female to plan their workout based on where they are in that cycle. So that's our big takeaway, Rachel. I'll let you interject and then I'll wrap up with kind of a few key takeaways.
Okay, wonderful. But yeah, very interesting. And again, important because, as you mentioned, a lot of the podcasters out here are kind of spouting the opposite of this, correct?
Absolutely. This is everywhere. Now, this is the best research we have on it. This was published just a couple months ago. So this is now our updated understanding of it. And previous research on the topic, I think, was largely done on rats or rodents. So this is a breakthrough in our understanding. I think the authors of this paper, Dr. Clenzo Semple, would say one of the reasons this paper is so important is that it makes the application of strength training simpler. Now, she's not rooting for that. That's not why she did the study, but we're trying to get more people involved in strength training. And if the message out there is, well, you better know exactly where you are in the menstrual phase, and you need to know when you're lifting and how heavy you're lifting based on where you are in the menstrual cycle, that overcomplicates strength training. One of her messages is you can just strength train whenever you want to during your cycle. And then she gives some common sense advice. And she says, if you don't feel good, if you feel like based on my symptoms, I don't want to strength train today, then don't strength train. Wait 2 days, wait 4 days. The beauty of it is you get the same results regardless of when you strength train during that menstrual cycle. So she's not saying that you have to do a workout at a particular time. She's saying, listen to your body. And if you don't feel like working out based on your individual symptoms, then don't work out. But the research says your workout's going to be equally effective regardless of when you perform it.
Yeah. But no, that makes sense because, as you mentioned, we're getting a lot of guidance and it can get really confusing for the consumer if they are like, oh gosh, now not only do I have to figure out what to lift and what exercise to do, now I have to worry about where I am in my cycle. It just creates a lot of noise that sounds like is unnecessary.
Yeah, and I think in our industry, there's probably kind of a maybe a polarization. I think fitness professionals, and this means fitness professionals working in clubs and studios, and then also fitness professionals that are on podcasts and creating content. I think those fitness professionals, we tend to want to make it more complicated, right? We want to make it more complicated because we just have more to talk about and we're interested in those complexities and all of that nuance. So it's good, maybe, for fitness professionals when things are complicated. However, I think it's bad for our industry and I think it's bad for participation in exercise. And I think health club operators generally want it to be, I think should want it to be simpler because the simplicity removes a significant barrier in participation. And of course, that's what we want is we want participation. Now, I am never going to join you on this podcast and say, well, let's just make it simpler, even if the research says it's more nuanced. In this case, the research says it is not more nuanced. It is this simple. Based on how you feel, plan the strength training workout, you're going to have equal results regardless of where you put it in that menstrual cycle. So
Makes
this is
sense.
a wonderful study that says simplicity is evidence-based, and I think that's good for all operators.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, what other key takeaways?
That is our takeaway. I think that's it. And I just want to make sure we add at the end that our lead researcher here, Dr. Lauren Clenso Semple, says you can still listen to your own body. She's not saying, hey, you shouldn't listen to your own symptoms. You might feel better or feel worse based on your symptoms in your cycle, but you don't have to assume that if you get a workout in at a particular time in the cycle, the results are going to be different.
All right. Anything else you want to share, Luke, on this?
No, I think this is a key paper for us, and I think it's a key addition to the body of research around women that we've probably ignored for too long.
Wonderful.